Hello, and welcome back to another chapter of Beyond the Brink and Fighting Back. I'm Rosemary Armao, your host, and I have as a guest today Anita Sanchez. Let me tell you about her. Anita is an award-winning book author. She writes lots about nature and the environment. She writes for young people, and she is a champion of the kind of downer side of nature. She likes poison ivy and dandelions. We'll talk to her about that. Mud puddles, strange things. But she also, for the past couple of years, has been putting out a Substack active on social media, and the name of it is The Optimistic Activist. Now, anybody who knows me, and you've been listening to me either on this podcast or WAMC before that, knows that I am anything but an optimist. I was called the doom girl for a while because I have been saying since just before the Trump first administration, that we were all doomed. And I don't feel very optimistic about things right now. And you have quite a different point of view. I'm eager to talk to you about that. So let me begin, Anita, by asking you about a quote that you put at the end of every one of your posts. It's from Noam Chomsky, right? And it says, optimism is a strategy for making a better future. I want you to explain that to me.
Well, first of all, optimism is different than denial. When I first found out, how the election had gone, I'm like, oh no, no, I'm done. I don't want to read the news. I don't want to have anything to do with this. It's going to be fine. Someone else will take care of it. Everything will be great. And that's not optimism. That's just denial. That's just hiding our heads in the sand. And that's what got us here. So many people weren't paying attention. They just assumed America was rolling along fine. And, nobody needed to read the news or, write their congressman or call anybody. So I love that Noam Chomsky quote because he says optimism is a strategy. It's a plan. Um, Another great quote of his is, if you assume there is no hope, you guarantee there will be no hope. So I like that idea of visualizing the best thing that could happen. You also can visualize the worst, but you visualize the best, and then you try to plan a strategy for how you can get there. So that's why I like that quote. It's not that we're all goofy and everything's fine, because obviously it's not, but we're using optimism to help us try to fix it.
Okay, so I have to push back on you. And it's not out of disrespect. And I've heard this before. I've been told, oh, you just leave people hopeless, they won't do anything. But I am highly annoyed by liberal optimism, which I think is really Pollyannish and unrealistic. And even if you're talking about right now, I don't see much cause for optimism. We have ICE, which is brutalizing our cities. We have troops marching into cities. We're bombing people in the middle of the Caribbean. The White House has been half wrecked. There's not a lot of good things going on. What evidence do you see for optimism? And liberals, for all the first term, and what you're calling denial, I think was a form of, oh, things will work out. We're an old country. We've been through worse. We haven't. To my point of view, this is a completely different situation we're in. We've never had a president who did not care about the Constitution. Even Nixon had some concerns for the Constitution. It does seem really different to me. And by treating it as, oh, it'll all work out, just seems wrong to me. I have trouble with that. How do you respond?
No, I agree. We can't just say, oh, it'll be fine. And if I don't need to do anything. It was funny. I read over some of my old Substack posts from a year ago today. And, things were pretty gloomy then. I remember the headline on the Post or the Times or something was Trump triumphant. And it was very hard to find some optimism a year ago. But now I'm seeing lots of signs for optimism. I mean, election day, the election we just had, Democrats swept the board. I mean, they trounced places where Trump had won in the reddest of states, school board elections, from the highest, the biggest elections to the town councils and school boards, Democrats won. And the main cause I see for optimism is people are angry. There's starting to be outrage. It took a while. I think everybody was shell shocked and people haven't been paying attention. And a lot of people still are not paying attention. But there's starting to be outrage. Blowing up people in the middle of the ocean, there's starting to be outrage about that. It took a while. We had to kill like 80 people before anybody really got upset. It took a while. But there's outrage. One of the things I think that really began to spark the outrage was the photos of the literal wrecking ball knocking down the White House. I think that began to wake people up.
Mm-hmm. I really want you to be right, but for every optimistic sign you see, I can point to two or three bad ones. The day after that wonderful election, the off-year election, the Democrats, there was a total blue wave. Yes, you're right. But the very next day, they backed down from a shutdown that will now result in huge increases in health care payments. And so the liberal optimistic point of view was, oh yeah, well, we may have lost the battle, but we'll win the war because people really care about their health now. Is that really true? I don't see it. I wish I did.
Well, I I don't deny that there's going to be a lot of pain before we get rid of this administration. I mean, I think actually it was a good thing that the shutdown ended. People were people were reaching the point where they just were blaming everybody. They were blaming Democrats as much as they were blaming Republicans. It really wasn't winning Democrats any more points. I think the time had come to end the shutdown. And it's possible that, healthcare is going to go through the roof. And I think that may have to happen. So I'm not optimistic that everything will be great short term. I'm optimistic long term, but I do think we're going to have a lot of pain. I mean, people are going to die. People are going to have crazy price increases at the healthcare and the grocery stores. So I'm not saying, I don't want to be a cockeyed optimist and just say, oh, it'll all be fine. But I think the people who are not paying attention right now, because there's a lot of people who haven't really been affected yet. They're going to be affected maybe at the end of the year or maybe after the midterms. A lot of the healthcare stuff is set to change after the midterms. So it
Mm-hmm.
may be after the midterms that people will start getting affected, but it's going to start. I mean, there's definitely going to be some pain before we see some gain.
You referred to polls. I mean, the polls I read showed that the Republicans were blamed far more than the Democrats for the shutdown, and that was increasing. So, but I don't trust polls anyway. And the polls also still show that Trump is still pretty damn popular, even though his popularity is not what it was even back in January. Definitely less than it was last year, but it's still a third to up to a third or a little bit more of the country still thinks he's got the right idea. I just have trouble being optimistic that we're going to come back from this. Or if we do recover, that it won't take years to get back even to where we were at the end of the Biden administration. And I want to say one more thing in defense of pessimism, okay? And then I'll give you a chance to answer me back. Because I've gotten a lot of criticism for this. I'm like the doom girl. And I keep being told, well, people will just be paralyzed if they don't have hope. And I'm not sure. Pessimism offers some benefits over optimism. You improve your preparation. You get ready to fight back. You have enhanced realism. You manage your anxiety. They call it defensive pessimism. When you expect the worst, you lower your expectation and you get ready for challenges. I have not stopped being. I'm a pessimist. My answer would be my Substack would be the pessimistic activist. That it may not work. We may be a complete failure. We may be losing our democracy, but I'm still going to go down fighting like hell. And that's activism too. Your
Well,
turn.
it is, and I think part of it's semantics. What you're calling pessimism, I'm calling strategic optimism. Um, Optimism is where you look at the worst possible outcome too, but you work for the best. But if you're pessimistic and therefore you have low expectations, then you get into the self-fulfilling prophecy. You get what you settle for. And if you're pessimistic, oh, we'll never, we'll never get a single payer health care. You guarantee that no, you're right. We will never get what we want. Um, so I disagree that pessimism has as much power as optimism. I think pessimism can lead to you being realistic. That's true. But I think ultimately it leads to paralysis. And I'm seeing so many, progressive people that I know who are still fighting to get out of that paralysis of, oh, it doesn't matter. No matter what we do, it's going to be bad. So why should I even bother? I'm just going to hide in, nature, literature,
My
binge watch
family.
TV, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
paralysis
concentrate on your
paralysis will keep us
grandchildren. Right. I
right.
saw this.
Your family, all the good stuff there is, and there is good stuff. And we do need breaks. I mean, I often write about the importance. We all know that we all have to take breaks. We can't be upsetting all at Twitter all the time. But paralysis will get us nowhere if there's even the faintest hope that something somewhat better might come of it. You might be able to inspire people to do a little bit of activism. And it's very hard to get people motivated to do anything. I mean, even the No Kings protests where millions of people showed up, it's still only a tiny percentage of the
Right.
population. I stand
Right.
on the street corner holding my little sign, and hundreds of people drive by me, and I'm thinking, why aren't you now, over here holding your sign too? So many people just aren't active. They're
Right. It,
busy. I
even
get it.
even down to voting, which is the most important and easiest thing you can do as a citizen. And we don't even have a majority of the people. I guess it's a majority, but very small majority who actually even vote. So that is depressing. And particularly inactive lately have been young people. You've written books for young people. I teach at a college level. I'm amazed at their idea that, oh, it's all worthless, it won't do any good. Why am I going to bother to go out on a cold, rainy street corner and hold up a sign? What good to wear a costume? What good does that do? You write a Substack on this? How do you get them motivated?
Well, I'll tell you one way not to get young people motivated, and that's to sit behind a folding table with voter registration forms and a ballpoint pen, because I've done a lot of that. I go to local colleges, community colleges, trying to register voters, and it's you know it's not working. I think social media is the answer, and I am not a high tech person, but I've forced myself to really get out there and learn about social media and figure out what Blue Sky and Threads and Instagram, and I'm trying to conquer TikTok because I think social media is the way to reach young people. Um, I mostly write for kids, little kids, and they have that marvelous enthusiasm. They're enthusiastic about everything, and then about age, oh, well, it's getting younger, maybe 10, 12, they start getting cool. They're too cool for school. And it's kind of cool to be, oh, well, nothing matters. And people don't regain that enthusiasm till later in life. Sometimes it's not till they're,
Hmm.
60 or so.
It's
And a
true.
lot of the really enthusiastic activists are, 60, 70, 80, 90. They're the ones who really care about things.
Yeah, you are listening to Beyond the Brink and Fighting Back, and we're talking with Anita Sanchez, who is the optimistic activist, unlike me, my polar opposite here. And Anita, were you politically active or involved before or during the Trump administration? When did this all begin for you?
It started with my son, who was a huge West Wing fan, really into West Wing, and he got into politics that way. And then he was one of the Deanie babies. Remember, Howard
Yes.
Dean ran for president, and he was one of the first to get onto the internet. I didn't know what it was, but my son, who was 16 or so, was on the internet, and he really got into Howard Dean. And so he dragged me, kicking and screaming. He wasn't driving yet, so I had to drive. So he dragged me up to New Hampshire in January, and we stood in a snowbank, freezing. It was 4 degrees, and we stood there holding signs on a New Hampshire street corner for Howard Dean. And that was what,
Wow. That's a while back.
2012, maybe? Yeah, I think it was 2012.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was a while back, and I never got bored with it. I don't follow sports at all. I just don't understand following a team, no matter what sport they're playing. For me, I think politics is my sports.
So
I
I was
really
going to
got
ask
into
if
it.
there was a specific horror or atrocity in politics that got you involved, but it was actually something, it sounds like it was something much more positive.
It was the fun and excitement of the campaign, the energy of the Dean headquarters in this town in New Hampshire. And at rush hour, we would all rush out and hold up our Howard Dean signs. And we drove around in the wilds in New Hampshire, passing out brochures and stuff. Of course, Howard Dean got trounced
For
in the
screaming.
primary.
Isn't
So
that kind of amazing that he
the
he
scream, yeah,
screamed and
the scream.
that was enough to shame him out of the race and politics. And
Yep,
look at what we are dealing with now. Wow, a little bit
yep.
different.
Exactly. And but that the fun and excitement lured me in. And I was not extremely active for Hillary or Obama, but I got a little active. I got into a little bit of canvassing, calling people, knocking on doors, putting up signs. And then when 2016 hit us all like a freight train, then I really,
Then you got
began
real.
to get more serious. Yeah.
Okay, now you're a bit of a anomaly because you're a very shy person. You're an introvert, I'm told by your friends, and here you are, really out there, podcasting and social media, and you're of my generation. We're not the big social media whizzes, but you've gotten involved in both. How do you get the energy for that? What renews you? What keeps you going?
I do best when I'm doing something, you know, by myself. And so I really enjoy, of course, I enjoy writing. So that's what I mostly do. Um, but I really love the protests. Ever since I went to the Women's March in 2017 in Washington, D.C., and that was really pivotal for me. I knew it was going to be big, but I had no idea when I got off that subway and walked onto the mall
Uh-huh.
and saw that sea of pink. That's just so energizing. I've been energized from that ever since. And I
Interesting.
actually wrote it.
That's interesting.
I wrote,
I follow your Substack, and I hope some of my listeners will after hearing you today too. And when they do, they'll find that there'll be a whole bunch of politics and then a really indescribably beautiful close-up picture of a flower or of grasses. You are a nature lover and environmentalist. Is there anything about being in nature that reinforces or energizes you for political work? Are there lessons in nature for politics?
oh, absolutely. It's funny. I bought my first, cell phone that took pictures in 2016 because I knew I was going to want to be calling my Congress people after the election. And I discovered it had a camera on it. I'd never really taken pictures before, but it had a fabulous close-up lens. And so I started taking close-up pictures of. I'm not a good wildlife photographer. I just do, flowers, trees, leaves. It's almost all close-ups of nature things. And so I really got into it, and I discovered that the Substacks for me are more fun when I can use my pictures, and I'll put my pet pictures or nature pictures, or a lot. I take a lot of pictures at the protests, and I look for good signs that I can take a
Hmm.
photograph of, and then put that in the Substack. So the photography's been a lot of fun for me. But yeah, I get my spirituality, I guess, from nature for sure. I live in the wilds. I'm so fortunate. I can walk out my door and walk for a mile around trails on my property, and I'm outdoors in nature every day, and I could never live without it.
So it would have been easy for you to do what you described at the beginning, go into denial and just go walk the trails instead of getting involved in walking the protest lines.
Oh, definitely.
But you didn't. And was it really just your
Yeah.
son, or is there more to this? I want
Well,
tell
well,
me what really is keeping you going in this.
well, I think it's fear. The do you know the I think it's Wendell Berry poem, and a lot of people posted it after Trump got elected both times on Facebook. It's something like when I feel the poem generally is like, when I feel stressed out, I go into nature and I watch the heron flying in the stream, or some obviously more poetic than that. And I saw that on Facebook so many times, and I just kept thinking, guys, if we don't do something, there won't be any herons. There won't. One of the very first things Trump did in 2017 when he took office was he revoked a rule that prohibited dumping coal sludge into streams.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, there won't be streams. There won't be as many birds. There won't be the nature that we value won't be there. We won't have butterflies if we don't get serious about banning pesticides. And so I think it's the fear of losing that beauty that I love so much, that fear is a great motivator. And I think that's one of the things that really drives me. If we keep on like this, it's not just people at risk, it's nature. I think what drives people to vote is, their outrage about ICE or healthcare, the human issues. But for me, it's the environmental issues that most voters don't want to hear about. So I don't
Yeah.
really write about it in the Substack much. I used to write posts about how we've got to, be activists to save nature, and 11 people would read them. And then I
Right.
started writing about, the human costs of the Trump administration, and I got more people reading it because more people care about people, which,
Right.
which makes
Okay.
sense.
Again, another reason I can't figure out why you're optimistic. It's gotten worse since the first administration. Now he wants to undo, or I guess he's put out an executive order. He thinks he's already done it, eliminating even protection for endangered species and clean air and water and drilling in the Arctic. It gets worse and worse. And we have to come back from this. Even we have to get rid of him and then come back from it. And that's years in the future. It's so depressing. I don't, again, I have to ask you where the optimism comes from. I'm
Well,
trying to
I
persuade you
agree.
to be
It's
pessimistic,
extremely.
Anita.
Yeah, well, you're going to come closest to succeeding when we start talking climate change, because the climate change picture is extremely depressing. And I'll even indulge in a little denial there. I'll admit that. But I am optimistic, particularly with many of the states are really stepping up. I'm proud to be a New Yorker. New York and California and some of the other blue states are really leading the way. And a lot of environmental stuff, when things are taken away at the federal level, they can be, to some extent, reinstated at the state level. Um, I'm a little bit active, not much, in supporting my local land conservancy, because I
Right,
think it's all about green space. So on a local level, on a state level, I do see some signs for optimism. New York State has done some great stuff with banning the types of pesticides that are really hitting pollinators, for instance. But I will grant you that when I get into some of the global issues of climate change. It's hard to maintain your optimism, but I don't think pessimism is our friend either.
Yeah. I think you've just answered the next question I was about to ask, which was that you always advocate in your Substack that to make an effective protest, you have to pick the one thing you really care about and really go after that, really work for that. And I was going to ask what your one thing is. Sounds like it might be environment.
Well, it's funny for me personally. What motivates me is my drive to protect the environment, but that's not a winner at the ballot box.
Right. It's
So
not.
again, that's why I don't really try to sell it in my Substack. I think most voters, probably because it is so depressing, it overwhelms people, it scares people. I wrote an entire book for young people on climate change, and it just got remaindered. It did not sell well.
Wow.
People don't want to face up to the horrible realities. So now what I do in the Substack or in my writing for children is I sneak it in. There'll be a reference to climate change in the last chapter or in a section or in part of it, to try to make people aware without hitting them over the head with it and making them think, oh my God, this is so terrible, I'm just going to forget it. Because our worst enemy is apathy. Environmentalists have always known that apathy is what will cost us the battle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, we are talking. I want to remind our listeners who might just be have forgotten or just tuning in. We're listening to Anita Sanchez, who has worked for years for New York Department of Conservation. She's written books and educated people on climate change, and now has become an optimistic activist against the Trump administration and some of their definitely anti-environmental policies and other things as well. Are there other issues that also um, make you want to turn out on the street corner on a cold day with a sign, aside from the environment?
Oh gosh, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
everything.
there's such a laundry list of it, from Gaza to ICE to healthcare to, uh,
War all over the place, Nigeria,
you're
Venezuela.
right.
Yeah.
Misogyny, quiet piggy, yeah, there's just no end to it. But when I go to protest, and I've been to the No Kings ones and most of the recent ones, um, personally, the Epstein files is not like my number one priority, but that seems to be the thing that's causing cracks in MAGA world and Trump's power. So hey, I'll hold up a sign that says release the files. That's
Yeah,
that's fine. Why never?
actually, Marjorie Taylor Greene leaving, maybe I don't trust that, so I don't know if that's cause for optimism or not. But that was certainly a big crack in MAGA that I had not expected. I would not have predicted.
Yeah, there's just so much that every day there's something that just wasn't on the bingo card. And it's a new outrage, a new amazing thing. So it's certainly interesting. It's yeah,
Yeah.
you can't complain that we live in boring times.
No, that's true. Now, this is a little dated, but I have to ask you about your Thanksgiving because you wrote a very popular Substack. More than 11 people read this one on how we should definitely not do the avoidance thing and we should talk politics over the turkey. So I wanted to ask how your Thanksgiving went.
Oh, I was fortunate. I had a dear old friend visiting here who is just as progressive as I am, and we spent the dinner agreeing with each other on how terrible things were. So there was no problem there. But it does come up. I have family that don't agree with me politically, and we haven't had knockdown, drag out fights, but I am aware of speaking up, particularly because there's a lot of young people when the family gets together and they're listening. The young
Mhm.
people from I think I put this in the Substack. I once had a third grader assure me that Hillary Clinton was a serial criminal, and Really? I asked her for detail, and she had no idea why, but that was all she heard at home.
Wow.
And so I just want to be the voice that speaks up for, the kids who appear like they're not listening, but the kids
But
hear
they do. Wow,
everything.
that's fascinating. We are running short on time, but I would be remiss if I did not ask you to talk a little bit about some of the books you've written. I particularly want to know what I should see good or be optimistic about with poison ivy.
I've written two books on poison ivy, an adult one and a children's one. Well, do you like cardinals? Do you like bluebirds? Do you like robins?
I like all
Everyone
those
likes
things.
those things. Yeah, everyone, those are the birds everyone loves. Poison ivy is a major bird food. It's particularly a late winter survival food for many of our most beloved birds. It has berries, and no, their mouths don't get itchy. Everyone asks me that. Only people, only primates apparently, are allergic. It's an allergic reaction to poison ivy. It's an absolutely fantastic wildlife food. Deer, rabbits, mice, moose, all kinds of animals eat it. It's great survival food for birds. It's a native plant. It was here for thousands of years before humans got here. So it's got so many things about it, but the main thrust of my book, which is called In Praise of Poison Ivy, the main thrust of my book is about native plants, and how important it is
Right.
to protect our native plants. But kind of the hook, the gimmick for the book that I used to get people interested in it is that poison ivy was for hundreds of years a very popular garden plant, and it was planted in a lot of famous gardens, and people always get a kick
Wow.
out of that.
People who listen to the podcast know I talk about it a lot of Master Gardener, and we definitely are into promoting and propagating and selling even native plants. But I did not know this about poison ivy. I don't want it anywhere near my garden. I need either that or I need more bluebirds around. That would take care of it. And dandelions you're a fan of too.
Absolutely, they're not a native plant, but there's so much fun things about them, dandelion wine and all the lore and legends. But the thrust of my dandelion book, which is a book for adults, is that people hate dandelions on their lawn so much that we use these crazy toxic herbicides, and the cost of the cost in wild birds dead is absolutely appalling. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. Most birds that are killed by lawn pesticides go off and quietly die under a bush somewhere, and we
Oh,
don't see them. But I used to work for DEC. I worked with Ward Stone when he was the New York State pathologist. And, I've seen him autopsying garbage bags full of dead songbirds. I mean,
oh,
imagine how many songbirds it takes to fill up a plastic garbage bag. And he was autopsying them, killed by lawn pesticides, herbicides. And so that's why I get onto the dandelion thing, because I'm trying to convince people to practice tolerance. We or mow them or pull them or burn them or use vinegar or whatever. But there are better ways than using pesticides, which have huge implications for amphibians and
right.
uh, butterflies and all sorts of insects and pollinators, as well as songbirds.
And dandelions are just pretty. I don't know where we got the idea that they're horrible weeds that must be exterminated at all costs. It is a mystery to me. But is there anything else
They
that you
also
would like to say to my listeners, Anita, as we close out? We've gone in two different directions, activism and nature. You somehow pulled that all together in your Substack. I hope we've done that a little bit here. Anything else you'd like to say that I haven't asked you about directly?
Well, I think it's just to urge people to do something, to do one thing. I mean, everybody's busy. We all have jobs, we all have families, and not a lot of time to spend on it. One of my Substacks posts was it's called One Rock a Day, and it's about doing one thing maybe not even every day, but most days, calling your congressperson, reading an article, doing a Facebook post, doing one thing on some days, just keeping engaged and not tuning out. Give yourself breaks, but stay in the fight, because I think we're starting to see results. Maybe it's the optimist in me, but I think we're really starting to see some cracks. And the election gave me, the blue tsunami gave me a lot of hope. And I think we're all going to kind of take probably the holidays off, but starting January 2nd, it's going to be the midterms. The starting gun fires January 2nd, and it's going to be all midterms all the time, because these midterms are really crucial. And I'm going to work a lot on that.
We end our podcast with a toast, and my toast today is to optimism, which I don't personally believe in and never feel. I always feel very pessimistic, but I do believe in hope, even though I worry that we're doomed and it's all for naught. I know we have to get out there and keep fighting for what we think is right and what we believe in, and we both are doing that, Anita. Thank you so much for being with us.